The Colorado Authors League presents The Cal Zone, the League's official podcast. Welcome to a place for tasty conversation about books, art, and more, all created by members of the Colorado Authors League. Here's your host, Trisha Copeland.
Today we have Clifton Brown. He is a dark fantasy, sci-fi, soon-to-be romance, as well as a non-fiction author. So we are talking about writing in different genres, the challenges, maybe some workarounds. We're learning everything from Clifton today. So Clifton, start out by telling us how you got started as an author, maybe a little bit of your background.
I spent 8 years in the Navy, and several years as a retail manager, and now I drive a truck for a living. But I'm not a truck driver. That's actually a lifestyle, and I'm not part of that lifestyle. It's just a job for me. It supports a family. So I just wanted to make that distinction.
Well, I mean, I bet you I bet you've met tons of interesting people between the Navy, being a retail manager, and driving your truck. So yes, you have
Absolutely.
lots to draw on here.
Oh, without a doubt.
How did you get into being an author?
Well, it actually started about roughly 20 years ago, when my daughters were obviously younger, and I started writing stories for them. I created a story where they were the protagonists, and it was a fantasy novel. It was a bit of a fantasy novel, and it was about how this magic bookmark could take them into different stories. And the antagonist was one who wanted to change those stories, to change history, to change the future. And they had to go into these stories and stop him from doing that. So I would write a chapter every couple of days, and I'd read it to them as bedtime stories.
Neat. And do they love it to this day?
They keep asking me to finish it. I never did finish the story. I mean, life intruded, and I verged away from writing. I got back into it actually just a few years ago, where I started publishing short stories with a small imprint called Wicked Shadow Press. And they published 9 of my short stories, and then my debut novel. Unfortunately, Wicked Shadow Press closed their doors shortly after my novel went live, and then they came back, and I have not heard a word from them since. So, kind of on my own right now.
It happens. I'm assuming you got your rights back though, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Okay.
What I actually did was, um, I rewrote a good portion of the book, added more content, fleshed out the characters and the plot, closed some holes that I found, and I also changed the cover and published it under my own ISBN. So they're completely out of the picture.
Great. So it's new and improved out there in the world.
Absolutely.
So that was fantasy, right?
That was actually a genre blend. It's primarily science fiction.
Okay.
When I went to college the first time, I was a math and physics major, or math major, physics minor, and I had always been fascinated with what was called at that time chaos theory. Now it's quantum mechanics, or actually quantum gravity now. So I include a lot of science fact and how especially on the quantum level, how it can actually verify that things that happen in my novel could actually happen in real life
Oh,
when you
cool.
look at things on a subatomic level.
Okay, so the first book was more sci-fi-ish than it sounds like. Um,
But it
okay.
has a magic sword.
Oh, okay. Well, a little bit of fantasy in there. Not the quantum is not powering the sword, I'm guessing.
No, no. It actually
Okay.
has its own soul.
Oh, and so, ooh,
Hmm.
souls.
Yes.
Exciting. So definitely a blend there. And I think I was looking at your website, you've written fantasy as well, like straight fantasy?
No, actually.
No, okay.
I actually, to be honest, I did write a fantasy story. It was about 7 years ago, but I had no idea how involved the craft of writing was. And while the story idea was great, my writing was terrible. So I did publish it with a local publisher who was also a friend, and I decided to pull it off the market after I got some great feedback. And right now it's sitting on the shelf waiting for me to go back and improve it.
Did you have trouble jumping from that sci-fi to fantasy then?
Not at all. Not
Okay.
at all. I see it actually as different aspects of the same function. Fantasy is basically mythology or cosmology, and it is presented as a story. Science fiction, you just take something that might actually be true and you write it into a story. To me, there's not much difference between the two. You're still creating a story, just the actual engine that drives it is just a little bit different. And
Right.
a lot of times science fiction is not that far from fantasy anyway.
My husband would disagree, but he is like a traditional sci-fi traditionalist. Do you think about that when you're writing your sci-fi? Do you think or fantasy? Do you think about writing to an audience, or are you just thinking of what you enjoy writing?
It's mostly what I enjoy writing. I have a I get a con I'm not a I tried to be a plotter, but I'm not a plotter. I try to be a plantser, not that either. So I'm just a straight up pantser. And most of my writing actually begins with my characters. So I come up with an idea and then I create the characters. And first I create them on paper. And then while I'm driving, since I have all of these long stretches of time where I'm doing almost if I'm not listening to an audiobook, which I do a lot, I consume a lot of audiobooks, then I'm fleshing out my characters. And I put them in different circumstances in my head and I decide how they're going to react, what they're going to do. And once I am done with these characters, they're like real life people in my head. And so as I'm writing the story, I may try to direct them in a particular direction, and but they say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not what I normally do. You're going to do this. And of course, we have to negotiate and we come out to a great solution. So it starts with the idea, then the characters, then the story.
Okay. So, and your ideas. So, what was your idea when you wrote which book? Pick a book and tell me your idea so I can see how that
Uh,
happens and how you decided it was a sci-fi versus a fantasy. Okay,
this is my
in the
debut.
Ghost Shadow. That's
In the
very cool
Ghost.
cover,
Well,
by
yeah,
the way.
there we go. In the Ghost Shadow, and it started off actually. It was going to be a comedy, not comedy, but a satire on superheroes and their names. Like the superhero family is named Redstone, and the father's name is Flint, mother's name is Ruby. Um, the main character's name is Mason, but his nickname Mason Redstone, but his nickname is Brick, and the sister is Marble. So Marble Redstone. So anyway, it was supposed to be a satire on superheroes and how they engaged with the rest of the society. But my main characters decided that they didn't want it to be a comedy. It was going to be something serious. They were genetically engineered by a shadow organization that wanted them to basically take over the world. So it transitioned from that comedy into something serious.
And then, so from that idea of the satire on the superheroes,
Mhm.
you created these characters, and these characters decided they had their own lives and they needed to, I guess the antagonist is the group that is engineering people.
That group is ends up being a background character.
Okay.
It ends up being the thing that promotes or actually hires the true antagonist, who they hired her to kidnap Brick to bring him to them because they believe that he is the ultimate in their overall plan to take over the world because what they did was they genetically altered his parents before she was pregnant with Brick.
Okay.
And so Brick was born with everything that they had and more. That's what Indigo Shadow means. The family were called ghosts because of the abilities that they had. Brick was supposed to be the ghost's shadow, something far more powerful, and that would be the ultimate goal for their weaponization of humans or
Okay.
genetically improved humans.
Interesting. So, do you think that as a character-based writer, it makes it easier to do different genres? Because I do different genres too, and I'm very character-based. Like I usually have an idea for a character first, and then I figure out like what world or what challenges show off this character's qualities, right? And show off their arc or their story. So do you think that makes it easier and that's why your brain kind of works in these different genres?
Readers don't live in one genre, neither do their hopes or fears. Real life is already genre blended. I mean, and all at once we can feel love, horror, humor, wonder, dread, and basically it lets the writers match the emotion to structure. Let's take sci-fi for instance. Sci-fi kind of represents ambition and existentialism. Fantasy for mythic meaning. We always live in this mythic world, whether it be religion, whether it be mythology, cosmology. Horror for loss of control. That's the thing, one of the things we fear most. And romance, without romance, I mean, you have to have something that matters to you. That's how I see it. If there if there was not someone to care about, why would I go through all of these other things that I have to go through to progress through life?
Interesting. I like your take on horror because I hate the horror genre, but I hate being out of control as well. And I never connected those two things. So I learned something about myself today, Okay, you write nonfiction as well, I think. You have two books, one about emotional intelligence, and did I see something about point? I'm not even sure what that is. So, how did you jump between being a fiction writer and then being a nonfiction writer?
My first nonfiction book was about emotional intelligence, and it stems from the healing process that I had to undergo in order to recover from everything that happened while I was in the military. I had almost destroyed my marriage and had destroyed the relationship between myself and my adult daughters. And being a retail manager, especially for the organizations that I work for, they were very intent on teaching people how to handle conflict. And one of the things that they taught us, they gave us a very intense instruction on emotional intelligence. And I took it 15 steps farther. And I decided that with my background and in the hopes that I could help other veterans who had similar experiences to mine, that I would write this from a veteran's perspective. I would let them know that these are the things that happened. I allowed them to happen. And these are the things that I did to recover from that and help repair my relationships, including my marriage. And now I have very great relationships with my adult daughters and their families.
That's
So
amazing.
that was the impetus for their emotional intelligence.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine as a retail manager, you deal with many people in many situations, and you have to know how to get that done. How has it been different for you doing that or writing that nonfiction versus your fiction book? Was there a learning curve there? Did you get some instruction or did you just go for it?
A little bit of instruction. I joined this organization called publishing.com, and they helped me rearrange my thought process, how to actually construct a writing business, and some of the things to do to be successful in that. Still working on that though. And so my first attempt at writing the book about emotional intelligence, I actually hired a ghostwriter, and I gave her copious notes on the things that happened. I got the final product from that, and as we went through it, I decided that this is not capturing the essence of what I want, so I rewrote significant portions of that book so that I could tailor it more to my own personal experiences.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people do think about hiring ghostwriters, especially for nonfiction works, fiction
Hmm.
too, I guess. But it's interesting that you came across those challenges of not, did you feel it wasn't your voice enough? Is that sort of the problem?
Actually, she did a good job of capturing my voice, just not the depth of experience. I
Okay.
wanted to make it more personal, and it was a good writing if I wanted a clinical representation of my experience, but I didn't. I wanted it to be more personal, so um, that's why I did the rewrite so that I could make it more personal to me instead of just a clinical examination of what emotional intelligence is and what it does or what it can help with.
Even in a nonfiction book, well, if you want people to dive into those deeper emotions, it would seem that you would have to dive into those deeper emotions as well. So I guess it really depends on what your goal would have been with the book, whether it had been that clinical aspect or, really diving into the deep emotions and being raw and open and honest. Was that challenging? Were you fearful about people knowing that much of your story?
No, no, I did not reveal anything that I was prohibited from revealing. It was all not. It had very little to do with my experiences while I was serving. It had everything to do with how I handled myself after service. And that's another thing that I wanted to relate to, especially other veterans, that you can get a handle on this through different avenues. I know there's a there's a lot of alpha males in the service, and they don't want to go to anyone else for help. And there are also a few alpha males outside of the service, in my sphere of influence, that did not want to go to see a therapist. They didn't think they needed to see a therapist. I can handle it on my own. And I offered this book to them uh, as an option, and a couple of them it did help, and a couple of others decided, maybe I should go to therapy because this guy went to therapy and it helped him, so why can't I do it?
Okay. And that's definitely a hard transition from military to normal people life. I've heard that many times. So,
Yes.
how has your marketing differed, if in any way, between your fiction and your nonfiction?
That's something I'm still learning about, is how to market myself. I haven't hired anyone to help me out. I've taken several classes and watched video after video to try to learn how to do that. So it's a work in progress for me.
Okay.
As far as marketing my nonfiction, I had um, associated myself with another organization that was online, and that has been my previous podcast experience, because they primarily promoted nonfiction books. They saw my work and contacted me, and that was one of the ways that I try to promote my work, by sponsoring a few of their podcasts and getting my work out into a broader spectrum of people. Didn't work so well. So right now I'm back to picking and choosing what I can do and what I can't.
Interesting. And my brain is kind of jumping around because it does that sometimes.
No worries.
Thinking about fiction work, I think you said you look more at what you want to write. Do you look at trends in genres, like trends in sci-fi or trends in fantasy, and kind of tailor things at your next project to that? Or do you kind of pick your next project just what the characters are telling you?
I keep an eye on how things are going in the fiction world. I don't really tailor my writing to that, and to be honest, I don't know why. I If I did, that would make, I guess, in my mind, that would make me more of a commercial writer, and I'm not a commercial writer. I'm a guy that sits down and I write what's in my heart. I write what I feel. I write what's in my mind. So yes, I look at it. I know what the trends are, but I guess I don't really try to write to those trends. I kind
Right.
of stay true to myself and the stories that are in my head.
So I saw from your website that your work in progress is a romance. Do you feel weird about writing a romance as a man? Not many men do, I would have to say. I think that's my
Mhm.
impression, at least. And how are you making that switch?
Romance is has always been, well, I'm a hopeless romantic. Let's go there. I'm a hopeless romantic. I've
Just
always
admit
believed in
it.
exactly. That's who I am. I know I look like this big guy. I grew up in a not so nice neighborhood, but it's always been a very intrinsic part of my life. Relationships, whether they be romantic or just familial or just friendship, other or any kind. But I've always wanted to be in a relationship. I've always looked for someone, my person. I finally found my person. She's sitting in the other room over there, trying to ignore everything that I'm saying. But we've been married for almost 40 years. And so that story in itself is could make a decent book, but I'm not going to write that one yet. But it's always been a part of my life. It's always been something I've thought about. And I don't feel at all strange writing romance novels. As far as specific parts of romance, I'm not necessarily a closed door type person. Most of it is, but there are some intimate moments in my books, and some are kind of descriptive, but not very often. It has to be a really important part of the story for me to actually use that in an open manner. If it's not important, happens behind the closed door. But if it's something that is developmental to the relationship, then I write about it in the open.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, before we started recording, you mentioned that you basically have a romantic subplot, at least, in all of
Yes.
your books. And that is very much a part of the state of a human being, right? Like most of us experience those relationships at one point or another. Um, and so do you feel like this romance book is like an extension of what you've done before?
It's a story that's actually has been in my mind for a long time. I actually keep a dream diary next to my bed, and whenever I have something that really sticks with me, I reach right over in that dream diary and I'm writing it down. This is one of those stories that was part of that dream diary, and I also incorporate some of the previous experiences in my life and what happens in that dream. So yes, I it's very important that I get that story out.
And I looked at the description. It does look like it has a like sci-fi them against the world feel as well.
Yes, it is. The story begins with how they met, how their relationship developed, and it happens in the 1980s when interracial relationships were not necessarily shunned, but in 1980 it had only been 17 years since the Loving case in 1963 that made interracial relationships legal. So in the South. So it begins there and then progresses through him joining the Navy, and she had and gets sequestered in this super secret project that's developing this science that's going to change the world. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's actually something that he's been working on in his home, that in a not so nice neighborhood. But he's been developing his own concept of this theory of this science project that he's working on for the Navy now. Well, he basically disappears from the world. She goes to find him.
Okay.
And then when
Fun.
they meet, they discover that they have to fight not against people who don't want them to be together, but also this uh, subversive organization within the military that's trying to take this project and do other things not very nice with it.
Thriller romance is what it's sounding like to me
Mhm.
now.
It really is.
Fun. And all your covers are really good. I mean, you held up one. Do you do your own covers or do you have someone help you with those?
In the Ghost Shadow, this was done by 100 Covers. So they did that, but this is my other nonfiction novel, Beyond the Nile: Gods and Legends from the Heart of Africa. This one I did myself. I wish I had a couple of others, but I have one other and collection, but I call it an anthology that I sell. It's called Wicked Shadow Whispers. I did that cover on my own too. So it's
Wow.
kind of a split between the two. I do some of my own covers, others I hire out.
Well, you have great skills then. I have to tell you
Thank you.
that. If you had to tell us as authors some just like bullet point overview about writing in different genres, what would those be?
The genre blending is because we all live in a blended reality every day. Romance and dark fiction is not fluff, it's resistance. When the world is cruel, love becomes an act of defiance. Emotional bonds raise the stakes higher than explosions or monsters ever could. Darkness tests love, it doesn't cheapen it. So that's why romance fits with darkness. And also, there's an emotional contract with the reader. Yes, we can take readers into deep, dark places, but we can never abandon them there. And the darkness should reveal, not exploit. Even bleak stories can offer meaning or connection or catharsis, and that's one of the reasons that I write it's cathartic for me, because some of the things that I've experienced I can't talk about, but if I put those in a fiction story, who's going to know otherwise? For me, is because I live in all of those places as well. Growing up, I would shift from fantasy to science fiction to horror to other types of genre fiction like Dinar Kuntz, who also blended mysticism and science fiction and just regular good old storytelling. And so those are the things that I grew up with. I would shift from Piers Anthony to Jack L. Chalker to Stephen King to Peter White. I mean, I read everything. And more recently, N.K. Jemisin is one of the authors I've tried to read, but her stories are so hard hitting for the things that I've experienced in my life. It's hard for me to consume that because it's something that I lived. Same thing with Tananarive Due, and Octavia Butler. They all write. They all blend their genres. They all write about things that probably a lot of us have experienced growing up in the American South. So that's what I have grown up reading. That's what I'm drawn to now. And it just doesn't feel right remaining in one genre when there's so much to be had by shifting from one to the other or blending them all together. Science
Yeah.
fiction with mythology and mysticism and cosmology. It for me it's all one thing.
Yeah, I'm really feeling your passion for what you do. And so it seems like the take home here is write to your passion and, write to be happy. And then hopefully you'll be a happier, more fulfilled writer and author rather than kind of maybe picking what may be popular or mainstream.
I truly did think about um, writing too for commercial reasons, and I thought about I can write romance, and there's actually that small imprint. Wicked Shadow Press asked me to write a few stories for one of their erotic magazines, and because they told me, yes, you can write really intense romantic and erotic scenes. So why don't you do these things for us? And that and that didn't necessarily inspire me, but it got me to thinking maybe I could become a romance writer. But it didn't feel right to write straight romance. I don't, I'm not sure if I could actually write something that's straight romance, but as where the romance is actually the core of the story. But I could write stories in sci-fi or fantasy or horror or a blend of all of those things where everything is happening around and is connected by that romantic core. Because if that romantic core wasn't there, things would happen differently.
That's a very interesting take on romance and like especially this like romanticy craze, right? Like I've been
Right.
thinking like, okay, what and it's funny because I have a friend, no lie, she is like hardcore Dexter. That's what she usually
Wow.
consumes, right?
Okay.
And now, and I just talked to her a month ago. She's like, no, I'm reading all romanticy now. I'm like, what? Where is this person coming from? Like, you jump from Dexter to romanticy, like the most like I mean, it's not fluff. I won't say it's fluff, but it's to me, it's the epitome of escape. Like it's in fantasy, you have a love story, and that's the epitome of escape, right? Whereas
Right.
Dexter was completely different from that. But
Yes.
yeah, thinking about, so I love the way you define that as like the romance between the characters or the relationship between the characters makes choices for them that affects the rest of the story rather than the story or some other plot element making choices for the characters. So that's, I like the way you define that. Well, thank you so much, Clifton, for being here. We so appreciate it. There's Smokey for his his cameo of the week. Tell everyone where we can find you and your books.
Amazon, my website primarily. That's where you'll find most of the information for me. www.authorcliftonbrown.com. And soon to be, cross your fingers, Kobo Writing Life.
Well, that's a new thing for me. So that was something I will have to look up, and hopefully that's something others can learn as well. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to the Cal Zone, the official podcast of the Colorado Authors League, supporting and promoting its creative community since 1931. Learn more about us at coloradoauthors.org. This is a production of the nonprofit Colorado Authors League.